My name is Hannah. I'm 29 from Seattle. I thought working at a prestigious marketing firm would be my dream come true. But the real nightmare began when my boss, Victoria, stole my idea, the campaign I poured my soul into. She smiled at me in meetings, called me talented. But behind closed doors, she was sharpening her knife. The day she took credit for my work, I felt my world collapse. Betrayal in the office feels worse than betrayal at home. It's public, humiliating, and silent. But I didn't break. I plotted, I waited, and then I struck back. Backhand index pointing right, keep watching. Because my revenge turned the office upside down, and no one saw it coming. They always say the corporate world is ruthless, but I never thought the knife would come from someone I trusted. When I first started at Langston & Co. Marketing, I was naive, hopeful, and desperate to prove myself. Victoria Langston, the founder and CEO, seemed like a mentor at first. Tall, commanding, with a voice that could silence a room, she oozed confidence. I admired her. I wanted to be her. And for a while, I thought she wanted me to succeed. She'd invite me into her office late at night, asking about my creative process, praising my ideas. She told me, "Hannah, you've got a spark that people would kill for." I should have realized the irony in her words. The campaign that destroyed everything started as a sketch in my notebook. A bold idea, an eco-conscious rebranding for a global coffee chain. I worked endless nights, pouring every ounce of energy into it. Victoria encouraged me, said it was brilliant. Then came the pitch meeting. The room was filled with executives, all eyes on her, and that's when it happened. She stood there, presenting my slides, my words, my vision, without a single mention of me. I sat frozen, watching as she soaked in the applause. Every compliment that should have been mine slid like a knife deeper into my chest. My coworkers patted her back, investors shook her hand, and I disappeared. No one knew it was my work. No one knew she had stolen everything. That night, I cried in the bathroom stall until my legs went numb. But when I looked at myself in the mirror, mascara smeared across my face. Something shifted. I whispered, "You will not bury me." From that moment on, I decided I wouldn't be her victim. I'd be her downfall. I began documenting everything. Emails she accidentally deleted. Drafts she edited, erasing my name. Voice memos of her promising me credit that never came. I became my own silent investigator. Meanwhile, Victoria grew careless in her arrogance. She flaunted her campaign everywhere, interviews, TV segments, glossy magazines. The higher she climbed, the more fragile her pedestal became. And I was the one shaking its foundation. Weeks later, I found my opportunity. The company was preparing for its biggest industry award gala. Victoria was set to win Innovator of the Year for my campaign. The night of the gala, I sat in the crowd, heart pounding, as she walked on stage. Cameras flashed, applause thundered. She began her speech with that same icy confidence, thanking everyone but me. That's when I moved. On the big screen behind her, a video began playing. Not the highlight reel she prepared, but my own compilation. Screenshots of drafts with my name, recordings of her late-night promises, time-stamped files showing I created the campaign weeks before she even touched it. The room gasped. She froze mid-sentence. For once, Victoria Langston had no words. Security rushed to stop the video, but it was too late. The truth was out. I walked out of that gala taller than I had ever stood. By the next morning, headlines read, "CEO exposed for stealing employees' work." Her empire cracked overnight. Clients pulled contracts, the board demanded answers, and investors vanished. As for me, I wasn't just an employee anymore. I became the woman who brought down Victoria Langston. This isn't just a story about betrayal. It's about survival, about reclaiming power, about showing the world that you can't erase a woman who refuses to be silenced. And this is only the beginning. The morning after the gala, I didn't need an alarm clock. My phone was buzzing nonstop, calls, texts, emails, news alerts. Victoria Langston exposed. Rising star accuses CEO of theft. The queen of marketing, a fraud. The headlines were everywhere. I sat on my bed, clutching a mug of coffee, trembling. Not from fear, at least not anymore, but from the dizzying realization that everything I had planned, everything I had risked had actually worked. But I'd be lying if I said I felt only victory. There was guilt, too. Part of me had admired Victoria once. She was the woman I wanted to become, powerful, respected, unshakable. Exposing her meant destroying not just her career but her entire identity. And though she had betrayed me, I couldn't shake the echo of her voice when she once said, "Hannah, you're destined for greatness." Maybe she saw my fire back then. Maybe she envied it. By noon, the board of directors released a statement. Langston & Co. does not tolerate unethical conduct. Effective immediately, Victoria Langston has been removed as CEO pending investigation. My phone lit up again, this time from colleagues who once ignored me. "You're so brave, Hannah. You saved the company. I always knew you were special." Funny how quickly silence turns to applause once the tide changes. But not everyone celebrated. 2 hours later, my inbox filled with hate. Supporters of Victoria calling me jealous, manipulative, ungrateful. Some accused me of sleeping my way to credibility. Others called me a liar despite the evidence. For every cheer, there was a knife. For every message of support, a shadow of doubt crept in. And then, an unexpected blow. Victoria herself emailed me. No subject line, just 6 words. "You think this is the end?" My stomach dropped. I stared at those words, my mind racing. She had lost her title, her empire, her reputation. But her tone carried something I had overlooked, vengeance. I wasn't the only one who knew how to plot. That night, as I walked home from the office, I felt it, the weight of eyes on me. The city felt sharper, darker. Every echo of footsteps made me glance back. Every shadow stretched too long. Was it paranoia? Or was Victoria really watching me unravel? By the time I reached my apartment, I was shaking. I double-locked the door, pulled the curtains shut, and sat in the dark. My chest heaved with the realization the war wasn't over. Because here's the thing about betrayal. It doesn't just disappear when the truth comes out. It lingers. It festers. And people like Victoria, they don't fall quietly. The next morning, the office was chaos. Half the staff whispered my name like I was a hero. The other half avoided eye contact, afraid of being caught in the crossfire. When the interim board called me into a meeting, I braced myself. They thanked me for doing the right thing, but their eyes told another story. To them, I wasn't just an employee anymore. I was a liability. One director leaned forward, his voice icy. "Hannah, do you understand the damage this has done to our brand? Investors are panicking. Clients are pulling out. We may not recover." I wanted to scream. The damage wasn't mine, it was hers. But I held my tongue. Walking out of that room, I realized another bitter truth. In the corporate world, truth isn't enough. Power matters more. Victoria had lost her crown, but her shadow still ruled the kingdom. And then came the twist I didn't see coming. That afternoon, a journalist from a major newspaper contacted me. He said he had evidence that Victoria wasn't acting alone, that someone else inside the company had helped her erase my name from the project. I froze. Someone else. Suddenly, the betrayal cut deeper than I imagined. It wasn't just Victoria. Someone else I worked with, someone I trusted, had been part of her game. As I hung up the phone, one thought consumed me. This wasn't over. The betrayal went deeper than I knew. And if I wanted to survive this battlefield, I had to be ready for another war. The journalist's voice still echoed in my mind hours after our call. "Victoria didn't act alone. Someone from inside helped her bury your name." That sentence gnawed at me like a splinter under the skin. Who? I replayed every interaction with my colleagues, searching for signs I'd missed. The assistants who smiled too quickly. The managers who suddenly avoided my eyes. The coworkers who once asked me about my campaign, but now acted as if they had never cared. One face kept appearing in my thoughts, Ethan, my project partner. He had been there from the start, brainstorming with me, laughing with me over late-night takeout when we worked overtime. He knew my process, my ideas, my drafts, and strangely enough, he had been unusually quiet since the scandal broke. The next day, I asked to meet the journalist in person. His name was Cole Turner, a sharp-eyed man in his 40s with a notebook that looked more like a weapon than a tool. "Why me?" I asked as we sat in a crowded coffee shop. "Why tell me instead of just publishing it?" Cole leaned in. "Because you're the only one who can confirm it. I don't want rumors, I want proof. And I think you already suspect who it is." His words made my stomach twist. "Yes," I whispered, "I do." He handed me a folder, emails, timestamps, memos, and there it was in black and white, Ethan's name copied on messages between Victoria and the board. Notes where she promised him promotions in exchange for his silence. Draft files he signed off on, removing my name before forwarding them to her. My chest tightened as if the air had been punched out of me. Ethan, the one person I trusted, the one I thought was on my side. I left the coffee shop in a daze, my hands trembling around the folder. The city blurred as I walked, headlights streaking into lines of white and red. By the time I reached my apartment, the betrayal burned hotter than anything Victoria had done. Her theft was cruel, but Ethan's silence, his complicity, that was personal. That night, I confronted him. I called, and to my surprise, he answered. His voice was low, cautious. "Hannah, I was going to explain." "Explain," I snapped. "Explain how you erased my name from my own work, how you stood by while she stole everything." There was silence, then a sigh. "She promised me a promotion, a department head position. I thought if I stayed quiet, it would help my career. I didn't think it would get this far." His voice cracked, but it didn't move me. "You didn't think," I spat, "or you didn't care." He begged for forgiveness, said he was scared, that Victoria manipulated him. But betrayal doesn't get softened by excuses. I hung up on him, my hands shaking. For hours I stared at the ceiling, rage coursing through me. First Victoria, now Ethan. How many knives could one back take before it collapsed? But then a thought struck me. If Ethan had been part of it, then he wasn't just a traitor. He was a key. The next morning, I walked into the office with a new plan. The whispers followed me down the hallway, but I kept my head high. I found Ethan at his desk. His eyes widened when he saw me, guilt carved across his face. "Meet me after work," I said coldly. "No excuses." That evening, we sat in the empty conference room. I slid Cole's folder across the table. "I know everything, every email, every deal you made." Ethan swallowed hard, his face pale. "What do you want from me?" "Simple," I said. "You're going to help me finish what I started. If Victoria wants a war, then we'll give her one. But this time, you're on my side, or I drag you down with her." He hesitated, then nodded slowly. Fear does strange things to a man. For the first time since the gala, I felt a flicker of control returning. Because now I knew the truth. Betrayal is poison. But sometimes poison can be repurposed. And Ethan, he was about to become my weapon. The silence in my apartment was deafening. I stared at the mirror, almost unable to recognize the woman staring back at me. Dark circles, trembling lips, eyes that once glowed with certainty, now clouded by fear and betrayal. My hands shook as I replayed Daniel's words over and over. "You shouldn't have gone digging." But I had, and what I found wasn't just betrayal, it was a carefully crafted illusion. Daniel hadn't just lied about the woman in the photographs. He had lied about everything. The business trips, the late nights, even the friends he claimed to be meeting. Piece by piece, the puzzle started to make sense. The receipts, the hidden messages, the sudden transfers from his account. I pulled out the small wooden box I had hidden under my bed. Inside were copies of every document I had collected, emails, transaction slips, even the hotel reservations under a different name. Each proof cut me deeper than the last, but it was all I had to protect myself. Because now, I wasn't just afraid of heartbreak. I was afraid for my life. That night, I caught my reflection again. The woman staring back wasn't weak anymore. She was burning with anger, betrayal, and a quiet fire of revenge. I whispered to myself, he thought I was naive. He thought I wouldn't fight back, but he's wrong. The cracks in my marriage weren't just cracks anymore. They were an open wound. And if Daniel thought he could bury me in his lies, he was about to learn just how dangerous a betrayed woman can be. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the pile of evidence spread before me. Every photograph, every receipt, every email, it all told the same story. My husband wasn't just unfaithful. He was building a second life, one where I didn't exist. But Daniel had made a fatal mistake. He believed I was still the same woman who once hung onto his every word, who forgave the small lies, who trusted blindly. That woman was gone. The new me was calculating, cold, ready. I started with a simple plan: mirror his lies back at him. For every excuse he made, I would play along, quietly recording his words. For every trip he claimed to take, I would already know the truth and wait for his slip. My goal wasn't just to catch him cheating. It was to strip away every mask he had built, one by one, until he had nowhere left to hide. By dawn, my plan was set. I would invite him into his own trap. When Daniel walked into the kitchen later that morning, he looked the same: polished suit, charming smile, but I saw something different now. I saw the cracks in his armor, the way his eyes darted when he thought I wasn't watching, the way he avoided my touch. "Long night?" he asked, sipping his coffee as though nothing was wrong. "Couldn't sleep," I replied, forcing a small smile. "Too much on my mind." His phone buzzed on the counter. For a second, his expression shifted, panic, quickly replaced by calm. He slid the phone into his pocket, but not before I caught a glimpse of the name flashing on the screen. Elena. I knew that name. I'd seen it before in hotel bookings, in late-night messages. The pieces were falling into place. I leaned against the counter, studying him. He thought he still controlled the narrative, but my silence was louder than any question I could ask. And silence, I realized, was my greatest weapon. That evening, while he was at work, I prepared the final piece of my trap. I copied every document, every message, every damning detail onto a single drive. I wasn't sure yet if I would expose him publicly or use it to confront him face to face. But one thing was certain: the endgame had begun. For the first time in weeks, I felt something close to peace. Not because the pain had lessened, but because I knew the storm was shifting. This time, I wasn't the victim. This time, I was in control. The night of truth arrived with an eerie calm. Daniel believed he had outsmarted me, that his double life was hidden behind layers of charm and control. But what he didn't know was that every secret he thought safe was now in my hands. I had chosen my battleground carefully: our anniversary dinner. The restaurant was buzzing, laughter bouncing off the walls, glasses clinking. He thought it was a celebration. I knew it was an execution. Daniel leaned across the table, smiling that same polished smile he used to win over clients, colleagues, and me. "To us," he toasted, raising his glass. "To us," I whispered, though the words tasted bitter. As he sipped, I slid the small drive across the table. He froze, his smile stiffening. "What's this?" "Your second life," I replied calmly. He tried to laugh it off, but I watched the color drain from his face. His hand trembled as he pocketed the drive, his voice dropping to a hiss. "Charlotte, what have you done?" "What you forced me to," I answered. "You thought you could bury me under lies, but now the only one sinking is you." For a long moment, he stared at me. Then he leaned closer, his mask cracking. "You don't know what you've started." But I did, because even as he threatened me, I knew the drive wasn't the only copy. I had already sent the files to my lawyer, to his business partner, even to the woman named Elena. His empire of deceit was collapsing before he could take another sip of wine. I stood, sliding my chair back slowly. "This dinner is your curtain call, Daniel. Everything you built on lies ends tonight." Around us, people laughed, oblivious to the quiet war ending at table 9. He sat frozen, watching me walk away, his face pale and hollow. For once, I was the one leaving him behind. As I stepped into the cool night air, a strange calm washed over me. My heart wasn't racing anymore. The fear was gone. All that remained was freedom. Betrayal had broken me once, but in breaking, it had also rebuilt me into someone stronger, someone he could never control again. The final curtain had fallen, not on me, but on him.